Are you on a cut and want to maintain muscle and strength? In this video, you'll get all the information you need. No life hacks, no magic pills, just scientifically proven strategies that work. Watch while you work out and learn while you train. Part 1. Deficit sizing and rate of loss. When a cut goes wrong, it usually isn't because you lost willpower. It's because the deficit was sized too aggressively and your body responded exactly how physiology predicts. Strength drops, pumps disappear, mood dips, and every working set feels heavier than it should. In a deficit, your mission is to keep the muscle and strength signal loud while you remove just enough energy to force fat loss. If you remove too much energy, training quality and recovery get punished, and the body starts trimming output and adaptation because it's trying to survive the stress, not optimize performance. Cutting success comes down to 3 connected systems you manage at the same time: energy availability, recovery capacity, and training quality. Energy availability is the fuel left after life, and training take their share. Recovery capacity is sleep, stress, and your ability to repair tissue and refill muscle glycogen. Training quality is what you can produce in the gym: crisp technique, heavy enough loads, and hard sets that actually stimulate muscle. A deficit that is too large hits all 3 at once, which is why people often feel smaller and weaker even before meaningful muscle loss happens. A deficit is a consistent gap between what you take in and what you spend, but the spend side is not just workouts. Daily expenditure comes from resting needs, structured training, the energy cost of digesting food, and the messy pile of movement you do without thinking. That last piece is NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and it quietly decides whether your cut moves smoothly or stalls. When you diet, NEAT tends to drift downward, meaning fewer steps and less spontaneous movement, unless you guard it on purpose. That's how someone can eat clean and still stop losing fat. To make the deficit controllable, you need 2 anchors: consistent intake and consistent activity. Beginners often change food, cardio, steps, and training all at once, then can't tell what worked. Advanced athletes get trapped too, because small shifts matter more when you're already lean. Your best boring move is to keep steps in a tight band and keep training days stable. For many lifters, a solid baseline is around 8,000 to 12,000 steps per day, adjusted to what you can repeat consistently without wrecking recovery or adding constant hunger. Now let's size the deficit intelligently. For most people who want to keep strength and muscle, a moderate deficit is the sweet spot because it preserves training output and recovery. A strong starting point is roughly 10 to 20% below maintenance. If you carry more body fat, you can often tolerate the higher end with fewer performance penalties because you have more stored energy available and you're less sensitive to small drops in fuel. If you are already lean, highly stressed, or pushing heavy weights year-round, you will usually do better near the lower end so your lifts stay strong. Beginners have a hidden advantage. The training stimulus is new, so the body is eager to adapt even while fat is coming off. With a reasonable deficit and enough protein, you can often maintain, and sometimes gain, some muscle while leaning out in the first months. That means the cut should not feel like survival mode, and you should not expect your strength to fall off a cliff. Advanced athletes are different. The closer you are to your genetic ceiling or very low body fat, the smaller your margin for error, and the more you need a slower, more deliberate rate of loss to keep performance intact. The rate of loss is your dashboard for whether the deficit is appropriate. A practical target for many lifters is around 0.5 to 1% of body weight per week. If you are very lean, very strong, or your priority is strength retention, closer to 0.25 to 0.5% often keeps coordination, bar speed, and recovery intact. If you have a higher body fat level and you are not peaking strength, you can usually aim toward the higher end without sacrificing muscle, as long as training quality stays high and you don't let recovery collapse. Tracking has to respect reality. Scale weight is noisy. Sodium, carbohydrate intake, stress, sleep, and training soreness can all shift water balance and glycogen, changing the scale without changing fat. That's why you don't judge progress from a single weigh-in. You look at trends, weigh under similar conditions, then compare weekly averages instead of daily emotions. Pair the scale with waist measurements, progress photos in the same lighting, and performance markers in the gym. If your waist is shrinking and your key lifts are holding steady, the cut is working even if the scale stalls for a few days. If you don't know your maintenance intake, guessing is fine briefly, but precision wins long term. A calibration phase can save weeks of frustration. For about 1 to 2 weeks, keep intake consistent, keep steps consistent, and keep training consistent. Then watch what your average body weight does. If it stays stable, you're close to maintenance. If it drifts up, you're above. If it drifts down, you're below. This beats relying on calculators because it uses your real body and your real lifestyle, including your schedule, stress, and the way you actually move day to day. After you start, your body adapts, so you need clear adjustment rules. If your weight trend and waist are not moving for about 2 weeks, you need a small change, not a drastic one. The first lever to pull is usually activity, because adding movement often increases expenditure with less hunger than cutting food again. Add a small daily step increase and hold it steady for a week. If you cannot add steps, make a modest intake reduction and keep everything else unchanged long enough to see the new trend. Consistency is what makes the signal readable. Training performance is your early warning system, so treat it like a serious metric. Keep 1 or 2 benchmark lifts and track a consistent top set. For example, keep a heavy set of 5 on squat or a heavy set of 3 to 5 on bench. Then follow with 2 to 4 back-off sets in the 8 to 12 rep range. Train 3 to 5 days per week depending on your schedule. Aim for hard sets that stop with about 1 to 3 reps left in the tank most of the time, because that preserves performance while still giving the muscle a strong reason to stay. Food choices inside the deficit matter because they decide whether you can train hard. Carbohydrates are the most direct support for intense lifting because they refill glycogen and make quality volume possible. If training quality is slipping, a powerful adjustment is shifting more of your daily carbs toward the meal before training and the meal after training without changing total calories. Dietary fat matters for health and adherence, but it does not power sets the same way. A practical approach is to keep a reasonable minimum fat intake for consistency and well-being, then let carbs do more of the work supporting performance. Metabolic adaptation needs to be understood without fear. Your metabolism doesn't break, it adapts. When you eat less, your body becomes more efficient. You subconsciously move less, resting expenditure can dip, and hunger signals get louder. That is adaptive thermogenesis, and it is normal. The practical response is measurement and strategy. Protect NEAT by maintaining steps, protect performance by keeping training intensity high, and protect adherence by choosing a deficit you can repeat week after week without turning every day into a fight. Finally, know the red flags that mean it's time to slow down before you lose what you're trying to keep. If sleep quality collapses, libido drops, soreness lingers, irritability spikes, and your strongest lifts slide week after week, you're under-recovered. The fix is not more punishment. The fix is a smaller deficit, a deload week where you reduce training volume, or a planned diet break at maintenance to restore performance and appetite control. A cut should feel challenging, but it should still let you train with intent, recover on schedule, and show steady progress over time. Part 2. Protein and macros for muscle retention. If Part 1 is about creating the deficit without wrecking your performance, Part 2 is about making sure your body keeps choosing fat loss instead of muscle loss. In a calorie deficit, your body is forced to prioritize. It will prioritize what you consistently signal as essential. Heavy training signals that strength and muscle matter. Protein signals that amino acids are available to repair and maintain tissue. When either signal is weak, the body becomes more willing to downsize muscle because muscle is expensive to maintain. Your job is to make the keep muscle message loud, predictable, and repeated every day. Protein is non-negotiable on a cut because muscle is always turning over. You're not just building muscle, you're constantly breaking down and rebuilding proteins in muscle tissue. In a deficit, the rebuilding side gets harder because energy is limited, stress hormones trend higher, and training can create more recovery demand. A strong protein intake offsets that by supporting muscle protein synthesis and reducing the need to pull amino acids from your own tissue. This is why people with the same deficit can get radically different outcomes depending on protein consistency. You'll hear people talk about the leucine threshold, and you don't need to turn it into a chemistry class. Here's the simple, useful version. Leucine is one of the key amino acids that helps switch on muscle protein synthesis after a meal. To get that switch to flip reliably, you typically need a meal with enough high-quality protein, not just a tiny sprinkle. For most adults, a practical meal target is roughly 25 to 40 grams of high-quality protein, adjusted upward if you're bigger or very lean and dieting hard. Hit that a few times per day, and your muscle gets repeated stay signals. Now set your protein target in a way that works in real life. For cutting, a strong range for most lifters is about 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. If you're already lean, you're dieting aggressively, you're older, or you're training hard 5 or more days per week, you often benefit from being closer to the high end because your margin for error is smaller and your recovery demand is higher. If you're newer, heavier, or struggle with adherence, staying near the middle can be easier and still very effective. If you want an even more practical rule that helps when body fat is higher, think in terms of lean mass. When someone carries more fat, protein needs don't rise forever with scale weight because fat tissue doesn't demand the same protein support as muscle. In that case, you can base protein closer to your target body weight or estimated lean mass, then watch performance, hunger, and recovery. The perfect number matters less than consistency. A slightly imperfect protein target hit every day beats a perfect target hit only on good days. Protein quality matters, but not in a moral way. It matters because different proteins digest differently and provide different amino acid profiles. Animal-based proteins like whey, dairy, eggs, fish, and lean meat tend to be rich in essential amino acids and leucine per gram, which makes it easier to hit that muscle-building signal per meal. Plant proteins can absolutely work, but you often need a bit more total protein and smart combinations to reach the same essential amino acid coverage. If you eat mostly plant-based, aim for the higher end of the protein range and choose protein-dense staples. Food choice is also about hunger and adherence. When you're cutting, you want proteins that are high in protein per calorie and easy to repeat. Lean meats, chicken, turkey, fish, shrimp, egg whites, low-fat Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, and tofu or tempeh are workhorses because they keep you full without blowing the calorie budget. Legumes are great too, but remember they carry more carbs along with protein, which can be a benefit on training days. The best protein plan is the one that fits your schedule and tastes good enough to be boringly consistent. Distribution across the day is a hidden superpower for muscle retention. If you eat most protein at dinner and barely any earlier, you miss chances to trigger muscle protein synthesis multiple times. A strong approach is to spread protein across 3 to 5 feedings, each with a solid dose, so you get multiple muscle stay pulses. If you train later, make sure one of those feedings lands in the few hours before training. If you train early, get protein in after. You don't need perfection, just repeated signals. Around workouts, protein and carbs work like teammates. Protein provides building material. Carbs provide performance fuel and recovery support. If you can, get a protein-containing meal 1 to 3 hours before lifting, then another within a few hours after. This supports training quality and reduces how catabolic the workout feels in a deficit. An optional tool for night hunger and recovery is a slower digesting protein before bed, like cottage cheese or casein, because it can reduce late-night cravings and provides amino acids during sleep. Carbs are not the enemy in a cut if strength is the goal. Carbs refill glycogen, and glycogen is the fuel that lets you push intensity and volume in the gym. When carbs get too low for your training demands, you feel it fast. Fewer reps, worse pumps, slower bar speed, and a higher perception of effort on weights that used to be manageable. A practical move is to bias a bigger share of your daily carbs toward the pre-workout and post-workout meals, because that's when they most directly support performance and recovery. You can also cycle carbs with your training week without turning it into a complicated ritual. On training days, keep carbs higher to support heavy work and higher total sets. On rest days, you can reduce carbs slightly and emphasize fibrous foods if that helps hunger control. The goal is not zero carbs, it's smart allocation. For someone lifting 4 to 6 days per week, carbs are often the difference between maintaining strength and slowly sliding backward. If you're doing high-rep leg work, your carb needs are not the same as someone doing light machines twice a week. Fat intake is the other macro you respect, not fear. Fats support hormone production, cell membranes, and absorption of fat-soluble vitamins. If fat goes too low for too long, many people notice libido and mood changes, dry skin, and general flatness that isn't just cosmetic. A reasonable minimum for most people is around 0.6 grams of fat per kilogram of body weight per day, sometimes a bit lower for short periods if carbs must be prioritized, but pushing too low can make adherence and well-being worse. Choose fats that support health and taste. The quality of fats matters because it affects satiety and overall diet quality. Olive oil, nuts, seeds, avocado, fatty fish, and whole eggs are reliable staples. Fatty fish also supports omega-3 intake, which is useful for general health and may support recovery quality indirectly. The key is dosage control, because fats are calorie-dense and can quietly erase your deficit if you pour them without measuring. You don't need to fear them. You just need to respect how quickly they add up and use them strategically. Fiber and micronutrients are the reason some cuts feel easy and others feel like a daily battle. Low fiber makes hunger louder and digestion worse, and low micronutrients can amplify fatigue and cravings. Build meals around high-volume, high-fiber foods, vegetables, fruit, legumes, and whole grains that fit your calorie budget. This is volume eating, but not as a gimmick. It's simply using food volume and chewing time to help appetite control. If you can make your plate look big while calories stay controlled, adherence becomes dramatically easier. Supplements can help, but only when they support the basics you're already doing. Creatine is one of the most evidence-backed tools for strength and performance support during a cut because it helps maintain high-energy phosphate availability in short, intense efforts. Caffeine can improve training output and perceived effort, especially when dieting fatigue creeps in. But it can also harm sleep if mistimed, and sleep is a fat loss multiplier. Whey and casein are convenience tools, not magic, useful when real food protein is hard to hit. Electrolytes can help if sweating or low-carb intake causes headaches and low energy. Be cautious with anything marketed as a fat burner. The return on investment is usually small compared to controlling intake, steps, training quality, and sleep. Some compounds increase alertness or suppress appetite, but they rarely produce meaningful fat loss without the deficit, and they can raise anxiety or disrupt sleep. Hunger management is where science meets real life. Hunger is not weakness. It's a predictable response to energy deficit, lower leptin signaling over time, and increased food focus. Your job is to reduce unnecessary hunger while keeping the deficit intact. Protein and fiber are the big levers, but meal structure matters too. Routine meals reduce decision fatigue. Planned snacks prevent "I'll just wing it" disasters. Pre-portioning foods that you overeat makes the deficit easier to sustain. If you rely on perfect discipline every day, you eventually lose the game. Food environment is a performance variable. If your kitchen is full of hyper-palatable snack foods, you are not lacking motivation. You are fighting biology with one hand tied. Make the easy choice the right choice by keeping protein options ready, using low-calorie, high-volume staples, and building meals you actually enjoy. Hydration helps, but not because thirst is always hunger. It helps because dehydration worsens performance and can increase perceived effort, and dieting already raises perceived effort. Drink enough that training feels sharp, not sluggish. Finally, you need checkpoints so you can adjust without obsessing. Your macros are working if your weekly weight trend is moving in the planned direction, your waist is slowly shrinking, and your strength trend is holding as well as expected for the deficit. You should also notice that your training sessions still have intent. You can hit your target rep ranges, like sets of 5 to 8 on compounds and sets of 8 to 15 on accessory work, without every set turning into survival. If strength is falling fast and hunger is chaotic, adjust the plan. Don't just push harder. Part 3. Training support, cardio strategy, diet breaks. This is where the cut becomes athletic instead of miserable. Your goal is not to burn as many calories as possible. Your goal is to keep the muscle and strength signal high while creating enough energy deficit to lose fat. That means training stays the priority, cardio supports the plan, and recovery is treated like a weapon. When people lose strength on a cut, it's rarely because they stopped trying. It's because they kept adding fatigue until their training quality collapsed. The smarter approach is train to maintain, keep intensity high, manage volume, and dose cardio like medicine. Intensity and volume are not the same thing, and confusing them is how good physiques get flattened. Intensity is how heavy the load is relative to your ability. Volume is how much total hard work you do, usually felt as how many challenging sets you accumulate per week. On a cut, you protect intensity because heavy enough loading tells your body, this muscle is still required. You allow volume to flex because volume is expensive to recover from. Practically, keep your main compound lifts in stronger rep zones, like sets of 3 to 6, then use accessories in 8 to 15 reps to accumulate stimulus without drowning in systemic fatigue. When you hear RPE or reps in reserve, think of it as a fatigue dial. If you finish a set and you could do about 2 more clean reps, that's roughly 2 reps in reserve. That's a sweet spot for most of your hard sets while cutting. You still push effort, but you avoid grinding every set to failure, which spikes fatigue and worsens technique. Beginners often benefit from keeping 3 reps in reserve on big compounds to stay safe and consistent. Advanced athletes can take some accessory work closer to failure, but they still want most heavy barbell work, shy of absolute limit effort during a deficit. Now zoom out and think in weekly landmarks. There is a minimal effective volume where you can maintain muscle, and there is a maximal recoverable volume where you can barely recover even while eating plenty. In a deficit, you live closer to minimal effective volume. For many lifters, maintaining muscle can happen around 6 to 10 hard sets per muscle group per week, sometimes a bit more for stubborn areas. Sometimes less for muscles that are already highly developed or easily irritated. If you're used to doing 15 to 20 sets per muscle, don't be shocked if your best cut happens when you do less, but do it better. Scaling volume down should be strategic, not random. Keep frequency steady so the muscle keeps getting repeated signals. For example, training 3 to 5 days per week is a strong zone for most people, with each muscle trained 2 times per week if possible. If fatigue rises, you can remove sets before you remove days. If you're doing 4 sets of an exercise, drop it to 3 while keeping the load and technique crisp. If you're doing 3 exercises for quads, reduce to 2, but keep 1 heavy pattern and 1 controlled pattern. The goal is to keep performance and progress markers stable. Exercise selection matters more in a deficit because your tolerance for joint stress and sloppy recovery is lower. This is not the time to start a brand new complicated program every week. Keep stable movements you can repeat and measure. Use a mix of free weights and machines so you can control fatigue. Heavy compounds like squats, presses, deadlift variations, rows, and pull-ups provide strong keep muscle signals, but machines and cables often let you train hard with less technique breakdown when energy is low. For hypertrophy support, controlled accessories like leg press, hack squat, cable rows, and lateral raises can be gold. Technique focus is also a performance multiplier during a cut. When glycogen is lower and you're slightly flatter, Your body wants to find easier movement paths, which can turn good lifts into sloppy lifts. Make every rep look the same, and treat that consistency as success. Use full range of motion you can control, pause when needed, and stop a set when form is about to change. This protects joints and keeps the target muscle loaded instead of shifting stress elsewhere. Advanced lifters should treat technique as a way to reduce wasted fatigue, not as making it easier. Deloads are not weakness, they are strategy. A deload is a planned reduction in training stress so you can recover and come back performing better. On a cut, deloads often become more necessary because recovery resources are lower. If performance drops across multiple sessions, sleep quality worsens, soreness lingers, and motivation feels unusually low, you don't need a pep talk. You need to manage fatigue. A simple deload keeps your training days the same, but reduces total sets by about 1/3 to 1/2, keeps loads moderate, and avoids failure. After a deload, many people feel like their strength returns because fatigue was masking it. Now cardio, the most misunderstood tool in cutting. Fat loss is driven by overall energy balance across days and weeks, not by whether you did cardio fasted or fed in a single session. Fasted cardio can work for some people because it's convenient in the morning, it can feel easier at low intensity, and it may reduce appetite for some. It can also backfire if it increases stress, reduces sleep, or drains energy that you need for lifting. If fasted cardio makes your leg day worse or makes you ravenous by noon, it's not a smart trade. The best timing is the one you can repeat, and that does not sabotage strength training. Doing cardio after strength training is often a practical compromise, especially if strength is the priority. Lift first, because that's the highest skill and highest force work, and you want your nervous system fresh for it. Then add moderate cardio as a finisher when the workout is done. This works well for steady state work like incline walking, cycling, or an easy row. The risk is piling too much lower body fatigue on top of leg training. So choose low-impact options and keep intensity controlled. If you squat heavy that day, don't punish yourself with hard intervals right after. For most efficient cardio during a cut, your best default is low to moderate steady state, often called Zone 2. You don't need a lab test. Use the talk test. You should be able to breathe through it and speak in short sentences, but you shouldn't be able to sing. That effort level burns meaningful calories, improves basic endurance, and costs relatively little recovery. Most people can do this for 20 to 40 minutes without destroying their lifting. Intervals can be useful for conditioning and time efficiency, but they have a higher recovery cost and can interfere with leg strength if overused. If you want a heart rate anchor, aim for a range that feels sustainably challenging, often around 60 to 75% of your estimated max heart rate. That's not a perfect number, but it's a good practical zone. The key is consistency and recoverability. If you finish cardio and feel like your legs are cooked for tomorrow's training, you went too hard or too long. Your goal is calorie burn with minimal interference. That's why many successful cutters lean on walking, incline treadmill, or cycling at a controlled pace instead of trying to win every cardio session. Progress cardio like a professional. Minimum effective dose first, then add only if needed. Start by locking in steps because steps are the quiet fat loss engine with a low fatigue price tag. Many lifters do well with daily steps around 8,000 to 12,000. If fat loss stalls, you can add 2 to 4 cardio sessions per week, starting at about 20 to 30 minutes each at an easy to moderate effort. Hold that for a couple of weeks, then adjust one lever at a time. Either add a small amount of time per session, or add one session, or slightly increase intensity, but don't increase everything together. Need is the difference between a cut that feels controlled and a cut that feels like you're stuck. When calories drop, your body tries to conserve energy by reducing spontaneous movement. You sit more, fidget less, take fewer extra steps, and you don't notice it. That's why tracking steps is so powerful. It turns an invisible adaptation into a controllable variable. Make steps part of your identity during a cut. Short walks after meals, parking farther away, and scheduled movement breaks keep your daily expenditure stable without adding the deep fatigue that hard cardio brings. Diet breaks and refeeds are tools for performance and adherence, not magical resets. A refeed is a short period, often 1 to 2 days, where calories come up primarily by increasing carbs. This can support training performance, refill glycogen, and give you a psychological break from constant restriction. A diet break is longer, often 1 to 2 weeks, where you eat at maintenance while keeping training and activity consistent. It can reduce diet fatigue, improve training quality, and make the next phase of cutting more sustainable. Neither tool erases the need for a deficit, but both can keep you from burning out. Knowing when to use a diet break is a skill. The leaner you get, the more valuable it becomes because fatigue rises and hunger signals intensify. If you hit a plateau combined with clear fatigue markers like worsening sleep, falling training performance, and constant food focus, a short maintenance phase can restore your ability to train hard and stick to the plan. Advanced athletes often plan these breaks proactively during longer cuts. Beginners can use them reactively if adherence starts cracking, but they should also learn that a smaller deficit often solves the problem without needing frequent breaks. When you take a diet break, set it correctly. Keep protein stable because muscle retention still matters. Bring calories up mostly through carbs because carbs directly support training intensity and gym performance. Add some fats if needed for preference and fullness, but keep the structure tight. Expect the scale to jump quickly, and don't worry, that jump is mostly glycogen and water returning to the muscle, plus higher food volume in the gut. If your waist measurement stays steady, you're not suddenly gaining fat overnight. Your job during a diet break is to restore performance and routine, not to turn it into a free-for-all. Finally, you need an exit plan so you don't rebound after the cut. When you finish the diet phase, don't immediately swing into uncontrolled eating. Move to a controlled maintenance phase for 2 to 4 weeks while keeping lifting and steps consistent. This stabilizes appetite, training performance, and water balance. If you want to add calories, do it gradually and keep the main structure of your meals the same. The goal is to lock in the new body composition by holding it, not just reaching it. A successful cut is not a moment, it's a phase you can sustain. Here's the practical takeaway you can start using today. First, stop guessing. Pick a moderate deficit you can repeat every day and track your weight trend, waist, and gym performance like they're one system. If your lifts are falling fast, don't push harder. Shrink the deficit or reduce training volume so intensity stays high. Second, lock protein in every single day and spread it across your day so muscle keeps getting the signal to stay. Third, place most of your carbs around training because that's how you keep reps, bar speed, and quality sets while you're dieting. Fourth, use steps as your baseline fat loss engine, then add cardio like a supplement, not like a punishment, keeping most of it easy enough that you can talk in short sentences. And if you feel the red flags stacking up, take the smart reset, deload, or run a short maintenance break, then come back stronger. Do that, and you won't just get lighter. You'll get leaner while keeping the strength that built your physique in the first place.